It is my distinct pleasure to welcome to our Second Act Women Organization virtual series, Ms. Diane Flynn. She is the CEO and co-founder of ReBoot Accel, which, as she was mentioning, is all about helping women kind of re-enter the workforce. She found herself after 16 years trying to get back in, only to recognize and be welcomed by a different world, a different landscape in the workforce. And so she tried to find help, didn't find it, and so decided to do something about it, just like the ladies at Second Act Women. So we are all about collaborating with women who see and identify challenges and decide to rise up to the occasion to create something amazing for you. So she is also the author of The Upside, which is all about championing diverse voices. We had the pleasure of meeting her recently, as Barb mentioned a little earlier in the background check, through a conference that she did with Sephora. And we were so attracted by what she was trying to do, and speaks to what we are trying to, how we're trying to support our women. So we are excited to have her today talking to us about confidence and what you can do, ladies, to really step in and own that. And so with that said, Diane, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Lupe. Thank you, Barbara. It's really been fun to get to know you and your organization. And this is why I love what I do, is because I get to work with just incredible women who have visions and passion and community. And that's what is really important to me. So as we go through this, I'll give you a quick snippet of why I came up with this particular talk. But as we go through, please use the chat to ask any questions. I love to make it interactive. If you want to ask a question, you are welcome to unmute yourself and ask it, because part of the fun is hearing other people's experiences and takeaways. And so I started doing this talk about 4 years ago. I was asked to speak at South by Southwest. And bear in mind, I'd been 16 years stay-at-home mom, 3 kids, had never spoken at a venue like this. I was a parent association president, spoke to those groups, but not something like this. So I hired a speech coach. And after I did my delivery, he said, that was good, but you've got to get rid of the word And I looked at him, I said, Nathan, I don't use the word And he's like, listen to yourself. You sure do. And when I listen to myself, which is the worst possible thing in the world, in my opinion, is watching or listening to yourself. But I realized I had so many speech patterns that I wasn't even aware of. And it got me interested. And then coupled with that, I heard from a lot of our employers who were interviewing our women as prospective candidates to hire, say that they just didn't package themselves well. They didn't speak well. They would speak too much about their messy divorce or whatever it was. And I got really interested in language. And so I put this presentation together after studying a lot of TED Talks and blogs and taking courses on what especially do women do that diminish our confidence and our impact. And what I like to say up front is that some of these are absolutes. You don't ever benefit from having in your vocabulary. Some of these are things to think about that may make you more assertive. I heard a lot of you would like to sound more assertive, but I also have a lot of women who tell me that they come on too strong, and they get told that they're maybe even aggressive. And so some of these might be strategies to soften your approach if that's you. So I want you to know that these are not things to do or not to do necessarily. These are things to be aware of so that you can be more intentional about the words you choose and the way you deliver it. Yes, that's the main thing I wanted to say. So let's get into this. And I'm going to do this a little bit differently. Usually I do this in breakout rooms, but we're a little short on time and we have a small group. So we're going to do this as a group. This is an exercise from improv that demonstrates the difference between the right word and the almost right word is the difference between lightning and the lightning bug. That's a Mark Twain quote. And this is an improv exercise. I'm going to stop sharing so we can all see each other for a moment, that reinforces the power of a word. And so if you could unmute for just a moment, we're going to do this together. The first exercise, and if any of you have taken an improv class, you've probably done this, but it's called yes, but. And what we're going to do is we're going to quickly, in about 1 or 2 minutes, we're going to plan a post-COVID-19 party, and someone's going to throw out an idea. The only way to respond, whoever wants to speak next, has to start with yes, but. Okay, is that clear?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Lupe, I'm going to call on you. Tell us your great idea for a party.
I would love to have a swim party at the beach.
Yes,
but
yes,
you know,
but
we would not be able to keep people from socially distancing. I just think it's a bad idea. Who else has an idea? Robin, you look like you have something.
Yep. Yes, but I have been eating for the last 3 months and I don't want to quit eating too much.
Okay, great. And who has another good idea for the party?
But if there's enough margaritas, I'm sure none of us is going to care what we look like in our swimming costumes.
Yes, but people are pretty self-conscious, and I just think that we're not going to get a good attendance. So anyway, that's enough on that. What's the energy like when you get yes butted?
It's negative.
Negative. It's, yeah, right. I like this. This
Yep.
says it all. And it's, do you want to suggest any new, fresh ideas? Step out of the box and take risks? No, you really don't. And I'm sure
Party
we'll
pooper.
get yes but meetings where you just say, ugh, like I don't even want to suggest it. Okay, we're going to have a little more fun. Somebody throw out a household object, household appliance.
Toaster.
Toaster. Okay, now we're going to play the yes and game. And in about 2 minutes, we are going to create the coolest toaster with the best feature set. We're going to name our toaster and we're going to give it a slogan. Okay, you ready to play? The only thing is, whatever somebody says, you have to start with yes and. Okay. All right. So Verona, you look like you have an idea for this toaster. What does this toaster do?
This toaster has a special feature that makes coffee and toast.
Yes, and what if we could make it from bed so I could get on my phone in bed and get it going?
yes, and it has another function that teaches men how to use it.
Yes, and itself cleans itself. So we don't ever have to dump it out.
I think our women always have that feature. Okay, and what else?
Yes, and you can order it today and receive it by tomorrow.
Yes, and you can even get it in an hour at your doorstep if you pay an extra $1.
Yes, and it comes with bread and coffee.
And what is its name?
The total toaster.
The total toaster. And what's its tagline?
Toast and coffee at a button's touch.
Coffee at a button's touch. There we go. All right, so we've got in what, a minute and a half, we've got this really amazing toaster with a name and a tagline. And how did that energy feel? I know it's a little harder on Zoom than when you're in a room, but how did that energy feel?
A lot more encouraging.
Much better.
Fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun, right? And you get a lot more creative ideas. People want to contribute. More voices were heard. So that's a tiny exercise that shows that just changing one word in your vocabulary can have a significant impact on the ideas that are generated. Let me go back to my screen here, the chair. And when I and you can all mute. You could just throw yourself on mute. Thank you. Sometimes at the end when I ask everybody to tell me one thing they're going to do differently, some people say, I'm just going to use the word and today and not but. And you can do it with your kids, You know, yes, you can have a cookie as soon as you finish your dinner. Yes, you can go out and play as soon as you clean your room. You know, yes, and creates a much more positive environment. So that's one word to think about. So how does weak language impact our careers? Well, weak language, as I'm going to show you some examples of, can undermine our effectiveness, weaken our credibility, it can water down our message, and it can impact our ability to advance. Essentially, what we want is our message to be heard and not to let the way we deliver it just detract from the message. So those are what I'm going to point out to you today. What if Laurel Thatcher Ulrich said, well-behaved women seldom make history? I'm no expert, but I think, okay, we do that all the time. Or Malala, when the whole world is silent, even one voice becomes powerful. Does this make sense? So what if we, you know, I'm going to show you ways that we do that all the time. How do we want to sound? And again, just unmute yourself and tell me some ways we want to sound.
I think we want to sound like we really know what we're talking about.
Yes, assured.
Yeah, assured, great, credible, an expert. I heard some of you say assertive, right?
And I would even say relatable. Like I want people to feel like they can connect to what I'm saying, that what I'm saying is not just in a bubble, it's relatable to everybody.
Exactly. And I like, Luca, that you didn't say, I want to be liked.
Oh yeah, no.
Well, they're very different. Relatable is just, you know, I want to have influence and impact. Yeah. So I would say, and you said some of these words, competent, capable, assertive, confident. Hopefully we can agree on these. So we're going to walk through 15 ways that women especially tend to use weak, tentative, or minimal language. Can anyone tell me the #1 word that, according to research, if women were to take it out of their vocabulary, they would instantly sound much more assertive?
No.
Sorry.
Just.
Okay. All right. You guys got #1 and #2 right there. Just. You know, I'm just checking in. I just have a quick question. I just wanted to ask you. Do you hear the difference in you know, what that just is doing? It's really diminishing our presence. The second word is sorry. And you mentioned that, a few of you mentioned that. I'm going to play a very quick video to amplify this point.
Sorry, can I ask a stupid question? Sorry, do you have a minute? Sorry. Yes. Yeah. Sorry. There he is. Sorry. Sorry. Sorry.
I was gonna say it. I have a question. Why don't we go back to the original thing?
Morning. You got a minute? Sorry, not sorry. Sorry, not sorry.
Okay, quick shout out to Pantene. I like how it demonstrates so many of the points between just and sorry. Women are 37% more likely than men to identify their own behavior as worthy of an apology. And if any of you play tennis, you probably have seen this happen. You're on a court with 4 women and there's 4 men next to you. The men are quietly hitting their balls and the women are saying sorry almost every shot. It's the funniest thing. I can't tell you how many times I play tennis and say we are going to have a no sorry game because it is so frequent. There's actually a new Chrome app that identifies your use of just and sorry in emails. It's that common. And it's called the Just Not Sorry extension. So what can we do instead of apologizing all the time? We can say thank you. I love some of these examples. Thank you for flagging that. Or good catch, I'll make the update. Instead of sorry for messing up again, or sorry for making another error. You know, I appreciate you noticing that. Thank you for waiting. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for taking all my questions. And there's research that shows that psychologically, when we spend our day saying sorry, we are withdrawing from our energy account. We are asking that person to respond in some way, okay? When we are saying thank you, it's like making a deposit. I am thanking you for doing something that you already did. And by the time I get home from work, if I have been saying thank you all day, I'm gonna have a lot of energy. I'm gonna feel great. I'm gonna feel connected and relational. If I have spent my day apologizing, I am going to feel depleted. And there's research to support this. So think about, again, sorry is perfectly appropriate in many instances. So I'm not saying don't apologize, okay? But we don't need to apologize for taking up space in a meeting. We don't need to apologize as much as we do. So be thinking about, is that apology merited or not? We deflect compliments. How many of you are good at taking a compliment? How many of you, yeah, oh, it was nothing. The team did it. Oh, I got it at Marshall's. It was cheap. We often tend to discount when we've done something well, and especially when it's in the workplace. If I've worked all weekend on a presentation and I killed it and I get a compliment, it's not gonna help my career to say, oh, it was nothing, or the team did it, okay? And that maybe the team did help, and that's great to credit the team. But women don't claim their achievements as much as they need to in the workplace. And so a more effective response would be, thank you. I so appreciate you telling me that. I spent the weekend, this presentation was super important to me, and I'm so glad it went well. I'm glad that, that kind of response, even if it's a compliment on your glasses, your lip gloss. I love how Barbara just owned it. Hey, you can go to Peepers and get your own. That was perfect. What somebody told me once is that their mother said, when somebody gives you a compliment, which by the way takes energy and takes time, so we also want to reward that. If you don't receive the compliment in a gracious way, it's like you're taking that gift and just throwing it aside. And I've thought a lot about that, because when I give compliments and somebody says, oh, thank you, I'm so glad you noticed. I'm so glad you noticed my new glasses. It makes me feel really good, and I want to give more compliments. So think about, how do you receive compliments? We use emotive language. I feel, I think, I believe, and again, a lot of people want to add this type of language if they get feedback that they're coming off too, not maybe too assertive, but maybe even aggressive. Maybe you do want to soften your language, but pay attention to the language used in the room. Men are less likely to use emotive language. So again, it's something to think about. If you want to be an impactful leader and you want to come across as strong and confident, you may want to examine some of these emotive words that you interject. Okay, I found this on what does confident leadership look like, and I wanted to share a few of these words. I believe is stronger than I think. I know I can do this. That's okay to say that. I'm confident I can do this. I can deliver. I assure you. I get it. I hear you. I understand you. I'm committed. I envision. It shows that I have a little strategic instincts. Okay, I showed you in the very beginning an example with the Malala story of using qualifiers. We say, I'm no expert, but, or I may be new to this, but, anytime we start with something but, we've instantly discounted our credibility. So again, think about if you use that kind of language. Hedging. We say things like kinda, maybe, really, sort of, perhaps, little. We add all this hedging language that, again, diminishes the impact we want to have. I once had a woman named Denise who was staying with me when I was giving this presentation. And that night over dinner, she said, oh my gosh, I just drafted an email, that's an appropriate use of just, and I want you to help me rewrite it. And so after we did this exercise, I said, Denise, can I use this in this presentation? Because it's a great example. And this is her real example. I used the green to amplify a few words. Dear Larry, I just wanted to find out if we could possibly meet next week. If it doesn't work, I totally understand. But if it does work, I'd really like to find time to finish our project. Hope we can meet, Denise. Okay, do you see all the hedging language in there? We rewrote this, and here was the rewrite. Larry, could we please meet next week to finish our project? I'm available any day at 8 a.m. Thank you, Denise. Do you hear how that tone is different? Which one sounds more sort of, I see Brenda nodding. I know I can't hear anybody. This is the part of Zoom I hate, but it does. I think there's no denying. It's a more confident, assertive approach. Again, if you are always told you're too abrasive, then perhaps add a few of these other words. Fillers. I mentioned my filler. Is another one. Unmute yourself if you have a filler that you use or have heard other people use.
I've had training on how to present, and it still didn't get rid of the So I'm a chronic person.
And Brenda, what do you think it is that is hard for you to take that out?
I think in the moment when I'm speaking, I don't feel confident. And so I know this is a miss something, because I think that the is giving me time to think about my next word or the next thing I want to say. But so then
I have a few thoughts on that. Yeah, two thoughts. One is the speech coach I worked with talked about the power of the pause. And if you can pause and not fill it with or like or so or any of these things, you will, just by doing that one thing, come off so much more confident. So I would really encourage you, and I'm exaggerating the pause right now, but do you see how pauses can really create a feeling of confidence in the speaker? The second thing I thought you might say, which is the reason a lot of people use the word is they're afraid of losing the floor. Sometimes at the dinner table, I'll use fillers because I know if I stop, somebody else is going to interject. And that can be particularly hard if you're in a meeting and there are a lot of men especially. It's hard to get your thing out. And that's where you have to still use the pause. But if you get interrupted, excuse me, I just would like to finish excuse me, I'd like to finish this thought. Okay, try it. I really encourage you. And I talk at the end about the importance of an accountability partner. My daughter and I were accountability partners for each other because I wanted to get out and she wanted to get like out, and we would call each other on it. And sometimes having somebody, and you could do it with, she would go like this or that, or, you don't have to say something every time, but it starts with awareness. And once you're aware of what you're doing, it's much easier to address.
For me, sometimes I get fixed on a word, and all of a sudden that word is my word all throughout. And I'll catch myself eventually. And sometimes I'll catch it after I've already said the word maybe 3 times, and it still finds its way all throughout the speech or topic sometimes. But I'm getting better at recognizing when I, fixate on a word. But I wonder if anybody else does that. I noticed it when I was doing the morning cup a couple of weeks ago, and I kept saying, I'm going to rock these boots. I'm going to rock. I'm in a rock. I'm in a rock. When we were talking about apparel. It's so, I don't know what that is, where I just get fixated on a word, and then it's a part of my vocabulary all throughout. And it's not even a word I use. sometimes all throughout my, when I'm just talking with people.
Yeah, I know you were asking others if they do that. I am confident a lot of people do that. I think we all do that. I mean, I just pointed out yesterday to my daughter, she uses the word, that's fair, instead of, you're right, that's fair. And I finally said, that's a new one that, sometimes when we find these new words, like I'm rocking it or
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
100%. I mean, even Oprah, if you listen to her, Super Soul Sundays or whatever, she always says, that's a tweetable moment. I mean, and she's one of the most professional and effective speakers I know. So I think everyone does that. The key, though, is your awareness, Barbara. You're already aware you're doing it. Once you're aware, you can start to take it out. I would encourage everybody to slow down their pace, think before you choose your words, and take a beat to process, and be okay with the pause. None of that is going to be a problem, and I think all of that is going to make you a more effective speaker. Okay, this I found in an article I was reading. I still read newspapers. I told you I'm 57, so I love newspapers. But anyway, this was this guy's quote, James. It was our coaches who found it. They were like, we really think it could be a hit. And Morgan listened to it and was like, I don't like it because we weren't used to it. And I was like, you get the idea. Yeah. Like is a word, especially some of the millennials, if you have kids in their teens, 20s, like is one of those fillers that once you pick up on somebody's use of it, you really can't hear their message because you are so caught up in that word. And again, that is the point of all of this. We want people to hear our message, not get burdened by our delivery. And I can't believe the editor used this in print. That was pretty astonishing. Okay, questions that undermine. And again, I gave an example of this at the beginning, but that's when we say something assertive or confident or brilliant, and then we say, does that make sense? Or it might say, right. What is an alternative? Let's say you're in a meeting and you throw out this great idea. What can you say to get feedback that doesn't make it sound like we've undermined the point we just made?
Are there any other perspectives or are there any other insights to share?
Exactly, yeah. What do you guys think? Turn it to them. I'd love your feedback. Will this work? There's lots of ways to get feedback. Feedback is essential. It's critical. But think about how you're soliciting that feedback. This is a little one, but I find I do this a lot in written communications, especially if I'm thanking someone for a dinner party they just threw. I'd like to thank you for, if you're gonna say just thank you for the dinner, that was amazing. There's lots of ways to take out little bits of our words that don't add to the meaning. Another one we do is intensive adverbs, things like very, extremely, so. And I'll give you an example. This was a guy, Perziel, I don't know how you say his name, but he finally got to play his dream round with Tiger Woods. And here was what he said about this in the newspaper. He's kind, he's a great guy, he said of Woods. He's great to talk to, whether we were talking about life or talking about how to play the course. It was a great conversation and great company too. A great help, a great 9 holes. I challenge all of you to expand your vocabulary. What are some ways that we can say things, or especially when we're giving feedback? Another thing my speech coach said to me, which I thought was brilliant advice, he said, if somebody comes up to you after you give a speech and says, you did a great job, ask them, say thank you, what specifically will you take away? And I thought this was really good advice, because not only am I finding out which were the elements of my talk that resonated, but I also can learn more specifics about what I did well. I loved your examples. I loved your use of slides. I loved your video. Whatever it was. And when you're giving feedback, it's really not very helpful to just tell somebody, you did a great job. If you can be more specific about what it was that you liked about their feedback, it's going to be much more helpful to them. So again, the challenge here that I'm going to challenge you with is try expanding your vocabulary. We use excessive punctuation. And I do have a male friend who ends every sentence in his emails with exclamation points, and sometimes many of them, so that's unusual. But we often put in a lot of exclamation points. And again, I have found, especially in business writing, and I'm talking mainly about the workplace here, that when I take out that exclamation point, if I say, Barbara, I hope you had a great weekend, period, it is just as impactful as great weekend, you know, everything being excited. There was an article I found in the Wall Street Journal recently that talked specifically about the exclamation point and asking what does it mean, and how people use them so much now that if they, it says that exclamation points are stressing people out. People use them, they don't know how to interpret it if it doesn't have one. So just think about, you know, how is that messaging being received, especially to people who may not be familiar with your speaking style. You know, there's some good friends you know well that are very excitable. I get it when they use them. But if your boss is always using exclamation points, it can have a different interpretation. This is usually the point in the presentation when people say, well, what about emojis? And when I went back to work 6 years ago, my kids told me you cannot use emojis in the workplace. But this was also from the Wall Street Journal, and they're saying that actually judiciously used emojis are a very good idea. And the reason is because in print or an email or text or Slack, it can be very difficult to interpret emotion. And so if I make a little joke and it may not be interpreted as a joke, and I put a little smiley face or a little crying face or something after, or then they know, okay, she meant that as a joke. So emojis can help with, by communicating the intent. But I guess we're not supposed to use the little pyramid poop emoji at work, so. I'm not sure when you'd use that anyway. Okay, the word actually is one that many people overuse, and it actually makes you sound like you're actually surprised you had a good idea. So think about if you use the word actually. To be honest, or to be truthful, or to tell you the truth is another one that you kind of question if they say it too often, what are they doing when they're not being honest? Uptalk. This is when we end our sentences with a question. It feels like there's a question mark. So let me give you an example. My name is Diane, and I'm an expert in language, and I love to give this talk, and I love giving it to people like you. Do you hear that? Again, it may sound really strange, but listen to podcasts or listen to the NPR, listen to people being interviewed. I have often heard experts who speak like this. You don't know if they're asking you something or telling you. And I always think, especially if you're negotiating, for instance, this is when we might do it often. I'd like a raise of $10,000. And then we usually proceed to fill in but if that's not going to work, I'll take free parking. I always think, end it with a period. Yes, I've done my research and I believe that a raise of $10,000 is merited. And then zip it and let them respond. So again, think about if you are engaging in, sometimes it's called uptalk or upspeak. And then finally, there's something called vocal fry. Give me a nod if you know what this is. Not a lot, okay. I was asked this once when I spoke to a group of women at SurveyMonkey, and someone said, what do you think of vocal fry? And she was about 25. I said, I don't know, I've never heard of it. And so I went and researched it, and there's some great NPR podcasts about it. It is almost universally disliked. It is very common, especially among the younger women, and it travels in circles. So if you're a young woman in a circle that speaks like this, chances are you will as well at some point. it is when you slip into a lower register, and I'll play. Kim Kardashian has really popularized it in recent years. So here's a short clip with Kim speaking like that, so you get a sense of what it is.
Out a little bit. Green for time you. Now offer to do it. You might like that one. I lived on the outfit and hated what you want and what you get. Interesting.
Yeah, I can only listen to it for so long. But listen for it. I've coached a number of young women who are interviewing for jobs, and at the beginning I didn't pick up on it. Now I go to it right away. I'm like, you just slipped into that vocal fry thing, and there's ways to get out of it by breathing, deep breathing, and raising your register. But you know, probably no one on the phone is doing this, but you may have a daughter who does this, so be aware of it. This I'm not going to go through, but this was in, I think, Forbes. Let's see, do I have a? Oh no, the PwC. But for instance, that first one, we are reluctant to claim our achievements. We say, I couldn't have done it without my colleague or my assistant, my boss, instead of, thank you, I worked hard on this. Or same thing, expecting others to notice and reward your work. You know, sometimes we think they should know that I want that promotion or I want that travel. And sometimes people make assumptions. Maybe we have young kids. Oh, she doesn't want to travel. She wouldn't be interested in that job. Well, maybe I'm the sole, you know, provider and I want to travel. And so letting them know that this is what I want to do. Having professional development plans. A lot of us are perfectionists. You know, we think that if we never mess up, we'll never get fired. But that is a really tough place to be in the workplace. So that's a whole nother talk on growth mindset. But anyway, you can see these habits can hold you back. So why do you think we do this? Why do we speak with many of these diminishing types of qualities? And you can unmute if you have a thought on that.
I mean, I think for me, you know, as you were kind of going through everything, I was like, guilty, 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 guilty. I think it's habit. And partially, I think it is, I guess I'm only aware of what I'm aware. And sometimes, you know, in this case, now you've brought to attention a series of things that I can say, okay, I'm going to pay attention to how many times I say just or say sorry. So it's almost like there was no prior necessarily focus or awareness about how we were, you know, diminishing our confidence. And so now that I know better, there is an opportunity for me to be more cognizant and take those pauses or rephrase those words or stop using them altogether as well too.
That's great. So Lupe is sharing that a lot of it is unconscious habit, right? We just do it. We don't even know we're doing it. I brought this one up. Does anyone else have a thought? Brenda, you unmuted.
Yeah, because I am known for being really blunt and direct and hurting people's feelings. So I try to soften myself, but in turn, I don't come across as confident or credible sometimes. So it hurts me, but you know, it's like I'm always being told I'm too much, I'm too loud, I'm too this, I'm too that, I'm too honest. So.
Yeah, you packed a lot in there, but what I'm hearing is that you are aware of how you can be perceived. You have tried some things to soften, but now you're worried you might have gone too far on that end. So I would suggest that you find an accountability partner and maybe work on some of these things and ask for feedback. You sound like somebody who's great at receiving feedback, which is terrific. That is a growth mindset. And I would, after a meeting, do you work right now? Are you in the workplace?
My boss just sent a message on Teams, good night, so I'm technically free.
Oh, but I mean, you are working.
I am in a corporate setting where I do job training of all things.
Great. Well, I'd say after a meeting where you're not maybe sure how you came across, find a partner who you trust and say, hey, I'd really like some feedback on this. I'm working on it. Can you give me some feedback? Or maybe ask them in advance of the meeting. I would love to debrief with you afterwards on how I come across. And if you could even take some notes on perhaps some words I use and how you think those are received. That's usually a really good way to get that kind of feedback. So thank you for sharing that, Brenda. Yeah, a lot of people will say, I don't want to be labeled as bossy or aggressive or abrasive or even worse. Or sometimes we want to be humble or nice or likable. Again, Lupe had talked about being relatable, which I love there. So can we speak with authority and be likable? And I would say, yes, there's some ways that we could do that. Greeting people warmly, especially if you're somebody who has been told they're a little bit, you said direct. You know, maybe a warm greeting would be a way to soften that. Or, you know, you sound authentic. I mean, I think anyone who is authentic, you know, exudes some likability. Being positive, using yes and versus but can be a way to be likable. Complimenting people when it's authentic. Having some not-more conversation. You know, how's your family? How's everyone's health? How's your kids in school? How, you know, that kind of thing. If humor is available to you, humor is a great way to be likable. And a smile always helps. I love to say that people like you most when you see them, when you are present, when you notice the people, especially the ones who maybe do, you know, open the doors or pour your coffee, or, you know, just respecting all people, I think is probably one of the best ways to be, you know, relatable or likable. But I also love Margaret Thatcher's quote where she said, if you set out to be liked, you will accomplish nothing. And it's a good reminder about what is the impact that we each want to have? And is being liked the most important thing? You know, women do have, I think, a very difficult double bind at work. They definitely are received differently for being assertive than men. And this is, again, based on research. Oftentimes when women are assertive, it's conflated with being aggressive. And Emily Aries has a great thing I watched it on LinkedIn. It's about being assertive. And what she says the difference is, if anyone ever calls you aggressive, remind them that being assertive, it really depends on whose rights are being respected. So if I am assertive, I am respecting the rights of everyone in the room. I am trying to protect the rights of everyone in the room and do the right thing. If I am aggressive, she argues that I am looking out for numero uno. I am doing things in my best interest. So if somebody says that woman is aggressive, this is something you can bring up to them. Well, are they really aggressive or are they just being assertive? So something to think about. So what is one word or habit, and I'm going to come back to this at the very end, but I want you to be thinking about, of the things, Lupe, you said I could have done all of them. You know, I really encourage you to take one or two, because it's very hard. Even getting out of my vocabulary, or just, it can take a while. So try to work, if you have a few, then, you know, dole them out over a month or so, and be thinking about that, because I am going to ask you to share that at the end. If you don't know what it is, you can try recording yourself and seeing if something comes up. You can have a partner, as we talked about. Try rehearsing for big presentations and being mindful of what those words are that you're using. If there's a word, like Barbara had mentioned, rocking, I'm rocking it, you know, and maybe she doesn't want to use that as much, put it on a yellow post-it note and put it on your computer, so that as you're on that Zoom call, you're aware that you don't want to say that word all the time. There are some apps that you can try out. Here they are called, one is Ore, that is for verbal speech, and like so, I'm going to show you what that looks like. Hemingway app and Grammarly are both for written communication. So it was
Grammarly.
Yeah, I use Grammarly, and it was Deborah, I think, that's writing a book. Is that right?
Yes, I love Grammarly too.
Yeah, you know, in fact, I get my weekly report that says, you know, you are use bigger vocabulary than 62% of.
Oh, wow, look at you.
Yeah, or this week, it'll say, this week you sounded assertive and blank. I mean, they actually analyze your emails. I was up for a walk one day, and I thought I'd give like so a try. So you speak into it, you can select which words you want it to watch for. I was just walking. I think I did it for about a minute. and I wasn't paying a ton of attention, but it told me that I used the word like twice, I used the word so twice, and it gave me a spectacular grade of B+. But anyway, it is another interesting way to become more self-aware of your speech patterns. This I threw in because I think it's cute. And a couple words on body language, because it is so important. 55% of our communication is our body language. Usually I open this up, but it's after 2. So I'm gonna, hopefully you would agree that she looks pretty confident. Actually, I'm gonna open it up. What is it about her that you notice?
Her elevated hands and the way that she's looking up.
Yep, her chin is a little bit elevated. Her arms are extended and open. What else?
She's standing up.
She's standing. And I like to point out her feet are planted, right? She's got these heels on and she's planted there. One of the things that is a giveaway for somebody who's a little less confident is when they shift all the time, or sometimes they'll even put one foot behind another foot. It's even interesting if you are doing a job interview. I know one of you said you are. Sometimes getting up and standing and having the interview, even if you're on Zoom or on a phone call, can project more confidence. I think those are the main things that I would know. Her posture is good. Her shoulders are back. So it's amazing. From one snapshot of the back of somebody, you can read into their level of confidence. Does anyone know what isopraxism is? I'm going to show you some pictures. We'll see who can figure this out.
Mirroring.
Exactly. Mirroring.
What was that?
Mirroring.
Oh, mirroring. Okay.
And the only reason I bring this up is there's some research that suggests if you're negotiating with someone, to the extent that you can mirror their behavior, you might be more effective. In other words, think about somebody who's leaning in like this at the table, negotiating, and think of the other person who's got their feet up and leaning back. Mirroring can be a way to be relatable. And so, again, it's something to think about. Amy Cuddy has one of the most popular TED Talks on her power pose. It has since been challenged by her research partner, so I'm not going to assess this as wonderful research. However, it does work for a lot of people. It's this idea of being expansive, to take up more space than you typically would with, like dinosaur arms, to be big and expansive. And what she would argue is that it actually has some physiological effect that makes you more confident, and there's some adrenaline or endorphin release or something. So I don't know if it works, but I do talk to women who it works well for. If you're going to go make a presentation or interview someone on Zoom or go into an interview, if you can make yourself feel bigger and more expansive before you do, it can add to your confidence. And then finally, there's this thing that came up during the Obama administration called amplification. And what they found is that a lot of women around the room, there weren't many women on Obama's team to begin with. And these women were being spoken over by the men in the room. And so they started amplifying each other. And so if I shared a good idea and then it fell on deaf ears, another woman in the room would say, you know what, let's go back to what Diane just said. I think that has merit. Or if the other thing that would happen is maybe a man would say the same thing 5 minutes later and take credit for it. They would amplify the woman by saying, yes, I think that's what Lupe was referring to a few minutes ago. So this is a technique that can be used to amplify those voices that perhaps aren't being heard in the room. Oops. Oh, and then finally, this is a book somebody recommended that I have not read, but I've heard it's very good. So if you want to go deeper, this Deborah Tannen has a book called You Just Don't Understand. It's on my reading list. And I did listen to this course by Emily Aries that was about the comments I made about being assertive versus aggressive. She has some very good things in there as well. So if you want to go deeper, there's some resources for you. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to turn it back to all of you. I'd love to hear any questions, comments. Oh, there are two things in the chat. I don't even know what any of them are. Is there anything that I should comment on that's in the chat?
I think Barbara's been answering quite a few. Thank you, business partner of mine. She's been kind of holding down the fort there. And, and I think some of the questions that were asked, during the session, you did a great job answering. I mean, ladies, well, first and foremost, Diane, thank you so much for taking the time. This has been amazing. I know I've learned a lot just even going through and getting them called out to now where I think it's an opportunity for us to take what we've learned, like you say, rise to the challenge and say, hey, what one thing can I do? And I guess you wanted to circle back to that, right? Because it was your ending comment, wasn't it?
I'd love to hear from a few of you what your takeaway is. Is there one word or speech pattern that you plan to work on?
I'm going to say sorry.
Sorry. And you can also put it in the chat if you are more comfortable doing that.
Mine would be just.
Mm-hmm.
Me too. For writing, I use so and just when I'm writing because I feel like it's a friendlier tone. And I think it's because it's from me using 140 characters or more now in social media. So I feel like I've lost sort of some of my abilities in writing. I've noticed this because I'm used to writing in a certain tone on social. So I'm making it a point, thanks to the e-newsletters, to write to write differently now.
Well, and what you and Lupe could do is be accountability partners to each other. It sounds like, Barbara, you're writing the emails. Lupe, read them and say,
we split them.
Let's try taking the word just out and see how it sounds. And again, there may be times, Barbara, like if I'm writing an email to someone and I truly don't want to feel like I'm bothering them, I might say, I just have a quick question. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Again, it's just being intentional about the word choice.
Yeah.
Is there, let's see, there were a few people, I think, Brenda, you said you wanted to feel more confident. Did you come away with any ideas on how you might improve your confidence?
Yeah, so I think for me, the one I want to work on is the piece, because usually when I'm in a setting like this that I have to introduce myself, I find that there's a lot of ums. But when I'm presenting at work, there aren't a lot of ums. And Barbara brought up a good point in the chat, which is, when you're confident about your subject matter, then the ums aren't as present. And so clearly I'm not comfortable talking about myself, even in this group that I'm used to so many of you. We're on these all the time, right? But the is still there. So I also think that for me, what's going to help me be more confident is probably that pause.
I am confident that pause will make you sound more confident.
Yeah, so that's what I'm going to work on. Thank you.
Great. Anyone else?
I think the pause is the one for me as well, to allow a
And
halt.
how are you going to get more comfortable with that pause?
I think just to practice it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Practice it and then do a little analysis afterwards. How did that feel? Did I feel more confident when I used it? I bet you will. And listen to TED Talks. They're usually highly honed, well-trained professional speakers. They use pauses incredibly effectively.
We just read, so we also have a book club, and Laura and Brenda are in it. And you guys are all welcome to join it. We literally just read Speak with Impact. And so, Diane, some of the things that you just went over are exactly some of the things that we talked about in our book club that was a part of this book. And it's a really wonderful read. Maybe you've heard of it or not. I haven't.
I'm going to put it on my list. It's called
Yeah, it was on sale at Barnes & Noble like last year, and I started reading it. Didn't go back to it until recently. But y'all, it was really good, and it talked about the pauses. It talked about the filler words or filler sentences that you just spoke of, and so it even talked about how to handle yourself on a panel, or if you're moderating and things like that. So yeah, It was
I
really
love
good.
hearing about
Glad
new
that you-
resources, so thank you.
Yeah,
So
you
are
actually had a few more things that were new that weren't in the book.
Great.
Barb, I used some of the tips in that book to do a presentation at work. And I got a lot of good feedback and I was able to pick up some of the mistakes. But I think that in conjunction with what Diane shared with us today,
Yeah.
you know, I'll be better.
Well, and ladies, with that, we are all works in progress, right? So give yourself a little grace as we continue to improve ourselves and step into and own our confidence. But Diane, thank you so much for this amazing session. Ladies, I hope you walk away with some great tips and strategies to continue to improve and build your own next second act. And I would love to invite you to join us for the Morning Cup this Thursday. We are going to have the CEO and founder of Circle, Charlotte Japp, who is talking about intergenerational conversations, the importance of having those and how they can assist you both in your personal life, but also in the work environment. Next week, we are also going to have Amazon and the city of Denver come and field questions for those ladies that are on the hunt for a job. We are going to have some recruiters answering all your questions, and that's on the next week's issue of the Morning Cup. If you haven't already seen the news, we launched BizLiveCon. It is on sale now. Yay! July 17th. We are taking our third conference virtual. So mark your calendars. Passes are available. You can check out secondactwomen.com. Ladies, thank you so much for being the most awesome part of our community. We so appreciate you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.